This is Ishi Wangmo, who has been studying here for 6 years. She used to work in a garment factory. It was a book by Tsutim Lodu Kempo, the Institute's head of instruction, that inspired her to come here and become a nun.
Doesn't water freeze outside in the winter cold?
Yes, that's why I wash and hang out my clothes as soon as I fetch the water.
Don't your wet clothes freeze?
Yes, they become like a block of ice. But there's some sun today, so it will be fine. Please come in.
Ishi Wangmo's quarters consist of a single dirt-floored room 2 meters square. There's a bed where her stuffed animals sit, an altar, and some bookshelves. Since she wears nun's robes all year long, she has almost no other clothes.
About how much do you spend each month on living expenses?
My personal expenses? Well, it varies, of course. But if I'm careful, I can keep it to around $30.
Do you work at all?
No, since I became a nun, all I do is study. I don't have a job.
So where does your money for living come from?
I'm given a regular scholarship by the Institute.
Does that cover everything you need?
Yes.
For the most part, students' living expenses are paid out of donations to the Institute. They eat twice a day. Students cook their own evening meals in their quarters. They take turns preparing the communal midday meal. In this huge cauldron, they are cooking a gruel of mushrooms and milk. Each student is given one bowl in the break between study sessions. The amount is small, but it contains butter to boost the nutritional content. The Institute owns no farms or livestock. Everything is brought in from outside the valley. Local villagers hawk their wares along the main street. These include tsampa, the staple food of Tibet, as well as steamed buns and vegetables. Students are free to purchase whatever food they like.
Do you find life difficult here?
Well, it's a very basic life compared to the outside world. We get only 2 meals a day, and each is just one dish. But actually, that is plenty to live on. It's so very different from my life when I was a child, and it was certainly a shock when I first came here. So yes, I have sometimes thought about all the things I'm giving up: family, job, money, and all that. But really, all those things we think we possess are nothing more than persistent illusions. The more I studied Buddhism, the more I realized that my previous way of thinking was completely flawed. Changing my life was necessary, but not enough. I needed to devote a lot of time to study spiritual things. During the day, I read by the light from the window. At night, I need the electricity.
Ishi Wangmo has been a formal student here for 6 uninterrupted years. She plans to stay and study for the rest of her life. Chen Xun is a 50-year-old Han Chinese who joined 1 year ago. In her earlier life, she worked for a Chinese company in Germany.
Society today is devoted to pursuing growth based on materialism. A greed is good philosophy has taken over everyone's minds. I just see this as sinful. When I was working, I felt nothing but anxiety at having to be a part of such a society. My days were spent caught up in worldly things, living only to work. I had no true goals. I felt my soul was empty and always agitated. I'm so glad I came here, because now my heart is always at peace. The law of the Buddha has a wisdom which no one can deny. This is a philosophy that contains no contradictions. I studied all the classic works on philosophy, and I found that they all contain contradictions. But there are no contradictions in Buddhist thought. We can say that Buddhism is the very definition of truth.